Hello and welcome to Amateur Radio Roundtable. Today is July the 21st, 2015. My name is Tom Medlin, W5KUB, and I'm with our other co-host, Ted Randall, WB8PUM. Tonight we've got a special guest, John Cunningham, W1AI from Gilbert, Arizona. John is the creator of the Ham Radio Online, which helps hams study and get their ham license. And we're going to be talking about a program tonight called Ham It Forward. So let's go out to John and see how he's doing out there.
Products that are out. And I'll call it a product. I don't know what else you'd call it, but it's a product. But HamTestOnline, I mean, I've seen people that could not put batteries in a flashlight. Don't know the polarity. They'll have one going one way, one going the other way. And these same people will spend 2 or 3 weeks studying and pass the technician test. And when they walk away, they're somewhat literate when it comes to the electronic side of it. So I've been really blown away and amazed by this thing. And I guess maybe, Tom, one of the things we ought to do is ask John, how did he come up with the idea, and how did he create this thing, and how was it designed?
All right. Well, thank you for the question, Ted. It's actually one of my favorite topics. This website has been a true labor of love. It has not been hugely financially rewarding. I'd have done better if I'd stayed and kept working on mainframe software stuff, because that paid really, really well. But I love doing this. The idea came to me when I first saw my first computer at age 15. I saw the computer and I realized instantly that education was going to be transformed, that no longer would we have classrooms with teachers standing up front talking to kids who are half dozing. I realized the computer was the perfect platform for teaching. And I figured by the time I got old, which, could happen any day now, I just turned 60, I figured classrooms would be completely obsolete. The computer is great at keeping track of things and remembering things. It can know what you've learned and what you haven't learned. And the first thing that came to my mind when I saw computers, at the time I was in high school, and I was studying French vocabulary, and I had these vocabulary cards. My parents were too cheap to buy me pre-cut cardboard cards, so I just took a piece of notebook paper and cut it up into little rectangles, and I'd write the English on one side and the French on the other side, and I'd put them on the table in columns, and then the ones that I was weak at, I'd have over in the left column, and I'd drill those more often, and the ones that I was really strong at, I'd have over in the far right column. And I'd only drill those occasionally, because you need to spend the time focusing on the weak areas, not the strong areas. When I first saw a computer, I said, well, this is perfect. The computer can keep track of all these little columns of all of these facts that you need to know. And I waited for decades for somebody to develop this application. It just seemed to me to be a no-brainer that CBT was going to completely revolutionize education, and no one did. And no one developed it. And I saw a lot of CBT and CAI programs, that's computer-based training and computer-aided instruction for those who are not all that computer literate. But none of them were any good. And I never saw a good one. And then in 1998, I was retooling. It was time to try some new technology and branch out in some new direction. And I decided as a project to help me learn Java that I would write what I was calling at that time my flashcard program. And I wrote the software, and my son used it to learn the state capitals and the chemical elements and things like that. And it worked pretty well. Then in 2002, I decided to get my ham radio license back. I'd had one back, in the dark ages when there were knights and horses and things like that, around the time that Ted got his probably. And I just loaded the question pool into my flashcard software with the intelligent repetition, and I used that to prepare for the exam. So I was the first person to ever pass ham radio exams using this software, and my experience was this. I went in, I got a perfect copy on the Morse code. Of course, back then you had to take Morse code in 2002. It was only 5 words a minute, so perfect copy was easy. And then I got a perfect score on the technician, a perfect score on the general. I missed one on the extra. I asked to be eased. I said, will you let me take it over so I can get a perfect score on that one? They laughed in my face, wouldn't let me do it. So I had to settle for what I'd gotten. Missed one out of all 120 questions. And that's how it came to be. And then a friend of mine said, this worked really well for you. Why don't you put it out on the web and sell subscriptions to it? Maybe people will buy it. And I did. And, of course, that turned into a huge amount of work because, at first it was just a flashcard program. It just asked the questions and you get to choose the answers and keep track of your right and wrong answers, and it would focus on your weak areas, and it had the intelligent repetition. The same intelligent repetition as today. Minor tweaks with the parameters, of course, over the years. But it didn't have any of the study materials at that time. So then I had to add the study materials in, and that's been years and years of effort, and we've written hundreds and hundreds of little study articles. So now it doesn't really look a lot like it did as just the initial flashcard program, but it does seem to be revolutionizing at least education in ham radio licensing. I mean, we haven't branched out and taken over the whole world yet, but this method really, really works, and that's what my customers tell me every single day.
Well, hey, John, I want to read an email here real quick. I just got in. We of course, advertised our webcast tonight on a bunch of Facebook groups. And WX1DER, Daryl Stout, sent an email, and he says, I know the HamTestOnline very well. He used it to go from technician to general in just 14 days. And then he went from general to amateur extra in 13 days. He said it was the best money I ever spent in ham radio. So that's a great statement that the guy made there about your program.
Yeah, I know Daryl. I know him from Facebook. He responds to a lot of posts that we put out on Facebook. We have a fairly active Facebook community. We have 7,000 and some odd likes. And he's always chiming in with helpful comments when people make remarks, or Christina finds some funny cat video to post. It's her thing. But yeah, well, and I want to say to Daryl, if you're watching, thank you for all of the wonderful comments you've made, and not just saying nice things about a HamTestOnline, but giving useful, helpful study hints to people, talking about the best way to study. And then Ted and I did a show. What was it, Ted? About a year ago, we did this show where we talked about study tips. You remember that one?
Yeah, I definitely remember that show because I got some emails on it.
Yeah, well, Daryl is a great one for giving study tips to the people on our Facebook site. So I have heard this phrase, the best money I ever spent. I get that in customer emails. I get several times a month. Someone will use exactly those words, and we get a dozen emails a day, and some of them really stand out. Like, we'll get one or two a week from people who pass all 3 exams in a single session. If we have any VEs out there that are listening, you probably experienced some of this, where some of our students come in and they'll do 2 or even 3 exams in one session. The reason is, if you're well prepared, if you understand the materials, if you're well prepared to answer all the questions, it's not a hard thing to do. And a lot of people have been very successful at it. Another thing, we get a lot of emails about. We get gushing, raving emails. I'll share something with you if you want. I think I could figure out how to share a screen here. If you don't mind, I want to show you something here. That this is a recent ad that we created. Can anybody see my screen here?
Not yet.
All right. Technology's going to take time. Oh, share your screen. All right, there we go. Share your screen. Start. Okay, I have to hit the start button. All right. It's over on the right side of my screen. This is basically something that we came up with recently. We went out on eHam, and people have been saying nice things about us on eHam for years and years and years. And for a long time, we were stuck at 4.9 out of 5 stars. We had that ranking for several years. Then one day it popped up to 5.0, and I've been holding my breath that it doesn't drop down. But for the last couple of years, overall, our rating on eham.net, with currently 463 different user reviews. These are real users. People gave their call sign and got a login to eham.net. And 97% of them are 5-star reviews. I mean, if you go on Amazon and you look at a product and you see this kind of a bar chart with the 5-star reviews being 97% and then a few 4 stars and practically none of the others, I mean, that's the reaction this product has gotten. And all I can say is thanks to all of the fans who have been so kind to us.
Well, hey, that is a great rating you've got there. You know, I've always been told you can't please all the people all the time, right? And we don't on our webcast here. But you've got a great rating there, man. I didn't. They're all like 5s, and I saw a 4 there. But wow, hey, there's a guy in the chat room. Rich W9TIT said, let's see, he got his. It's the only way to go. And then KA2OFM said, John, thank you for giving the volunteer examiners a free subscription to HamTestOnline.
Yeah, let me clarify about that if you don't mind.
Sure.
For any volunteer examiner, for any active volunteer examiner who currently has a general class or an advanced class license, we will give you a free extra course. And it's not some watered down thing. It's a full course with the study materials and the interactive intelligent repetition and the whole bit. It's the whole course. And the reason we do this, well, it's twofold. It's self-serving in a sense because we want VEs to know how great the course is so that, you know, if somebody fails an exam, the VEs will be right there to say, you know, here's a great way to study. But the other thing is our students cannot be successful if the VEs aren't ready for what they're getting ready to do. I mean, I've talked about maybe once a week we have, maybe once or twice a week we have someone say they passed all 3 in a single session. About once a month we get someone who says, I went into the exam planning to take all 3 in a single session, and I got there and they only had 2 VEs that had the extra class license, and one of them was a general, so all they could offer me was the technician, so I had to stop after that. That is a psychologically devastating thing to happen to somebody that they worked and prepared so hard. They put in probably, in order to be ready to do that, they probably put in somewhere in the neighborhood of 90, 100 hours of study. They've really sweat bullets, if you will, to get ready. And then they go in and they can only do that one little easy test, the technician exam. So we want the VEs to be extra so this won't happen to our students anymore. So bottom line is any VEs that have a general or advanced and they're active, that means they've attended 3 or more sessions in the last year, should just send us an email, create an account on HamTestOnline, send us an email. We will hook them up and give them the course, and it's completely free, no strings attached. The other thing I wanted to say, you said something about not being able to please all the people all the time. We do not please all of the people. Our refund rate is a little bit less than 1%. There's about 1% of people out there who try us out and decide this isn't the study method for them. For a variety of reasons, whatever it be, we have about a 1% refund rate. Our guarantee is unconditional. If you are unhappy with the site for any reason, I mean, what we say is if you fail the exam, you can get a full refund. But if you go back and look at the fine print on our policy, it says, or if you're unhappy with the site for any reason, we'll refund what you paid for it and cancel your subscription. And people take us up on that. Some people decide studying online isn't the thing for them. Some people really want the book. And for whatever reason, we honor that. And it's not one of these things where you have to ask for it within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, some nonsense like that. You got 2 years to study on our site. Our subscriptions all last for 2 years. And you have 2 years to request the refund. You just have to ask for the refund before your subscription expires 2 years later. And the reason we can give that kind of a guarantee is, you know, the system really works. We don't want any unhappy customers. I'd rather have an X customer than an unhappy customer. The system works for 99% of the people, so there's no skin off our nose if we have to give an occasional refund.
Yeah, I know that Ted has really talked this up on his QSL radio show. Ted, what kind of responses are you getting out there through, you know, the people that come up to your QSL radio show?
Well, it's I guess I want to say it's a multiplicity of things we get. Like, for example, we have people, excuse me, come up to the booth at Huntsville. The Huntsville Hamfest is probably one of the places where we just get bombarded with people coming up and saying, we passed our test. Actually what they do is they give us credit for it. They'll say, you guys are the reason why we passed our test, and I got my license. And I'll say, well, congratulations. I say, well, yeah, because you told us about this HamTestOnline. See, but they always come up as if we're the responsible party, and really we've had very little to do with it other than the fact we pointed them in a direction, and then they got involved with HamTestOnline. They did the studying, and they passed the test. But we get some of that at Dayton as well. A bunch of them at Dayton come over. They always come over and start in. I want to thank you. But the other thing we get is we get a lot of emails where people mention that they've passed the test. They now have their ticket. They're really excited. They want to write and tell us about it because they heard about HamTestOnline on QSO, and now they feel somehow they need to thank us for it, which is cool because it really makes me feel like we're getting something done. So what's the point of the QSO radio show? Why are we even there? Why is it we go to Dayton and I sit behind a booth and talk into a microphone rather than go out and fondle all of the boat anchors that I want to look at, because we're trying to develop a promotion of the hobby. We're trying to encourage people to get into the hobby. One of the things that I try to do when talking about HamTestOnline is I guess I'm going to say I talk about the simplicity. And the reason why I do that is I think a lot of study materials, a lot of amateur radio instructors or people who are wanting to teach, they overcomplicate things. They scare people. You'll see ham radio classes that are put on by clubs. They'll start off with 15, 20 people. By the third or fourth week, they're down to 5, and then sometimes in the end, they're down to 1 or 2. And I think it's a psychological thing. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to dream about getting this ticket. And then all of a sudden, they think it's too difficult. And a lot of that has to do with the instructor, and a lot of that has to do with the way the material is presented. Now, someone, maybe John, maybe you're the one that told me about this. In one of the ham radio study guides that you get for the technician test, the first thing it does is it starts off with coulombs.
Yep.
Am I correct in this? Talk about this for a minute.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
We don't have to say whose book it is. It doesn't matter because I think that I personally don't. Now this is Ted talking. I don't think books are the way to go. But some people love books. But go ahead and tell this story.
Yeah, I don't. Books don't work for a lot of people. I mean, I have some pretty severe attention deficit disorder, and books are not an effective way for me to learn. The only thing for me worse than a book is a classroom. I cannot focus in a classroom to save my life. But this particular book that you're referring to, it has about 3/4 of a page in order to get into defining the ampere. And it starts by defining the coulomb. The coulomb is the amount of charge that's on 6.02 times 10 to the minus 23 electrons. And it goes on and on through this description. And when it gets to about 3/4 of a page, it then goes on to define an ampere as the amount of current that involves 1 coulomb of charge passing each point in 1 second. And I'll tell you, any good course, any good basic comprehensive thorough course in electronics is going to start off that way. They're going to define what a coulomb is, and they're going to define amperes in terms of the coulomb. But that's not what my course does, because none of that's on the exam. My course is laser focused on what you need to know to pass the exam. We start off simply by making a statement that says, actually, let me share the screen and I'll read you what the statement says. You can see how simple it is to get started. Oh, sorry, that was the microphone, not the video. I'm going to try that share screen thing again. Tell me when you can see the screen up there.
Okay, we've got it.
Okay. So when you come on to HamTestOnline, actually I'm not on the home page. I'm going to go to the home page. When you come onto the home page there, there's a button here that says try it free. The free is in big, bright, uppercase letters. And then you scroll down a little and you say, I want to start the technician course. I'm just pretending to be some random person out there who just wants to give a try the technician course. There's a screen which talks about a little bit about how to use the system and the fact that you need to study at least half an hour a day and things like that. I'm going to skip by that screen. I don't recommend that people who are studying skip by it, but I'm going to do it because I want to delve right into the materials and talk about this thing that Ted was talking about. I start off my technician course. I'll make it a little bit bigger in case people have a low resolution screen or something. I start off just by diving right into the meat of it. Current, represented by the letter I, is the flow of electrons through a conductor and is measured in amperes or amps. An easy way to remember the word current is to think of electric current as being similar to water current flowing through a pipe. So it's the flow of electrons, not the flow of water. So then you click the OK button, and then it's going to drill the actual exam questions that come from the course. And the first thing it's going to ask is, what is the name for the flow of electrons in an electric circuit? And if you paid any attention at all to the last info text, you're going to know that the answer is current. You're going to click on current, and it's going to tell you you're correct, and then it's going to tell you a little bit more. It's going to tell you about voltage. Voltage is the electrical pressure or electromotive force that causes electrons to flow, and it's measured in volts. And if you compare electric current to a water current in pipe, then voltage is like water pressure. So I'm coming in real, plain, simple language, common, everyday English. I'm telling you what you need to know in order to understand the concept. Current's the flow of electrons. It's measured in amperes. Voltage is the pressure that makes it flow, and it's measured in volts. We'll click OK. See what we get next. It says electric current is measured in which of the following units. And if you were paying attention, then you know the answer is amperes. And you'll click it. It'll tell you you're correct. And then it'll say, what's the electrical term for the electromotive force that causes the electron flow? And if you're paying any attention, you'll know that that's voltage. You click on voltage. So what's the basic unit of electromotive force? It's the volt. So basically, what that book took about a page and a half to cover, covering Avogadro's number and coulombs and the technical definition of the ampere, and then getting into voltage and the technical definition of the volt. It took him about a page and a half. I got through it in about, what'd you say, about a minute? And the reason is I'm laser focused on telling you what you need to know in order to pass the exam. You need to know what current is. Current's the flow of electrons. What you don't need to know is you don't need to know Avogadro's number. You don't need to know 6.02 times 10 to the 20 minus 10 to the 23rd or whatever it is. You don't need to know the technical definition of the ampere. We're not going to make electrical engineers out of you. There is an enormous amount of information that you have to absorb in order to get from 0 to extra. We're looking at about 400 questions on the tech, about 500 on the general, about 700 on the extra. That's a lot of stuff, and there's not a lot of duplicates in there. Mostly it's 1 or 2 questions on a single topic. Like you look at something like near vertical instance propagation. There's maybe like 5 questions on that. You've got to learn a whole subject area in order to be able to answer just a small number of questions. You've got so much to get through. You don't have time to go off and be learning things that isn't on the exam. And the analogy I give is, if you were going to be taking an arithmetic test this afternoon, you would not spend the morning going out and reading biographies of famous mathematicians. What you'd do is you'd focus on what was going to be on the test. And that's what I recommend for people who are getting ready to take these ham radio exams. There's so much material that you do need to learn. Don't spend a lot of time learning things you don't need to learn.
So, John,
go ahead.
You have designed this where I guess if a person has a subscription, and if they miss questions, let's say they miss the same question over and over, doesn't your program just really start driving that question back at them until they learn it?
It's ruthless.
Yeah.
So my customers tell me, they say it's ruthless about drilling your weak areas until they're not weak anymore. And that's really the key to it. I mean, you have to have repetition to remember all of this stuff. So I teach it. I give you the text, and then I drill it, and then I go back and repeat it. The question is, when am I going to repeat it? And if it's something you got right, I'm not going to repeat it as soon as something you got wrong. If it's something you got wrong, you're saying it in about 5 minutes. But if it's something you got right, depending on the question, it's going to be maybe an hour or a day before you see it. I have a database of about 100 million responses. And I know that sounds unfathomably large, but when you think about it, I have 20, 30 people on the system studying at any given time. Actually, during the day, sometimes late in the afternoon, we'll get up to 40, 50 people on there. And they're all doing about 3 or 4 questions a minute. And if you do the math out, over a period of 4 years, which is how long the question pools survive, I get about 100 million responses. And I can tell from my database which questions are hard and which questions are easy to the average person. So an easy question you're going to see less often than a hard question, just because I have to make sure you got the hard stuff, because that's where you're going to have trouble.
Well, let me ask this question. When you see someone coming on to do the technician exam, what is the average time that it takes for a person to get from zero to the ticket in their hand?
Well, it really depends on the kind of person you're talking about.
Now, the reason why I'm asking, and that is for folks that are recommending the course to someone, what should they be able to expect a person to do if the person is actually putting effort into it and is really wants to pass the test?
Right. Well, most people are ready to pass the exam, the technician exam, after 10 hours of study. But that's not everybody, and that's not a perfect score either. It depends on your background. People who have an electronics background or any kind of a technical background, they're going to go a little bit faster than that. And it also depends on how good your memory is, which in my experience seems to be closely related to age. My average student is probably 50, which says a lot about the hobby. Mostly it's people who were interested when they were younger and now they're getting back into it. The older you get, as a rule, the worse your memory is. And the worse your memory is, the more times you're going to need to repeat things. So I get people who report, they're taking medication which interferes with their memory, or I had one guy that had a series of small strokes that interfered with his ability to remember things. So the older people and the people who have some medical condition which interferes with their memory, they're going to take a lot longer than 10 hours. On the other hand, you've got the young people. You got your teenagers and your 20-year-olds. We got a few of those in there too. And they tend to take like 4 or 5 hours, and then they're ready to pass it. So it does vary widely from individuals, but most people will be ready to pass after 10 hours. Now, if you're going for a really high score, if you're hoping to ace it, and there are a lot of people out there who don't want to take an exam unless they think there's a good chance they'll ace it. In that case, you're going to probably want at least 20 hours to be prepared to ace the exam. And that's just for the technician. When you get up to the general, it's about twice as long as the technician. Now, most people can pass after 20 hours, and for the extra, most people can pass after 30. But again, it varies widely on all of those.
So, John,
Go ahead, Tom.
John, do you provide support, right? People can call you and talk with you, and you explain these questions to them?
Well, we like to say that we have our mission statement is down at the bottom of every screen. It says the best study method, customer support, and guarantee in the industry. And I've already talked about the guarantee. Nobody else is giving you 100% money back guarantee if you're dissatisfied for any reason, good for 2 years. Nobody does that. And it is the best study method. It's more effective than books and classes, and we've talked about some of that. The customer support, I have 2 people who are doing customer support right now. We're hiring a 3rd person. We get phone calls. We don't get a huge number of phone calls. We get maybe 5 or 10 a day. Emails is where we totally get swamped. We get dozens of emails every single day. And then all people gushing. A lot of people are saying, I can't figure out how to log in. I've lost my password. And we do get some questions about the materials. We don't get a huge number of questions about the materials, but when we do, we take a close look at them. Some of them Christina will answer, and I'm sorry Christina's not on today. She had periodontal surgery this morning, and So she's actually on drugs right now that are making her sleep. She would normally be on something like this, and she's a lot prettier to look at and a little bit more well spoken than I am. But Patrick answers most of our phone calls and emails. The ones that he can't handle, Christina will do, and she, even though she hates the math, she'll even sometimes answer the math questions. But the hard ones go to me. And by the time they get to me, it probably, in most cases, means that there's something about the course that wasn't adequate. So I'll look at the question. I'll try and understand what their issue was with it. I will answer the question, and very often I will go in and I will make a change, an enhancement to one of the informational texts. If you can imagine the informational text on decibels and on logic gates, those have been rewritten like 3 or 4 times each because it's really, really hard to explain decibels. Decibels are a very confusing topic. But the more I help people and the more they come back and say, I don't understand this, I do understand that, the more it enables me to make the course better. That's another area I think that we can do a little bit better than books, in the sense that we're constantly upgrading the materials. Every time we get a question, we go in and we'll add another explanation or beef up an info text. We try to treat we try to answer the urgent emails, anything that would prevent someone from studying. We try to answer those within a few hours at the most. We don't have full people working around the clock all the time, 7 by 24. We just don't have the resources for that. But we have people checking throughout the day, every day, 366 days a year. And we try to answer all the emails within 12 hours. So if anybody has sent us an email, didn't get a response, check your spam folder, because we answer all the emails.
I was going to say, you listen to John talking, and I think most people could come to the conclusion that he has an extensive computer background, because he approaches life as if he's writing software code. And that's just kind of cool, because when you look at this course, it's like I said, it's like nothing else I've ever seen. But on the human side, let me ask this question: what about all the people you say they write, and a lot of them are gushing because they were so happy with it and everything? But tell me really the focus of this thing, in terms of how does it affect you when you see so many people winding up with a ham ticket that would have struggled with any other method?
Oh, I don't know. Wow, I haven't really given that thought. I've been doing this for 13 years. It's sort of become old hat. I mean, we've been doing this for so long. It's interesting, Ted, when we started this as the antidote to the random exams, because what was going on at that time, the internet was still basically new, and there were a lot of places springing up all over the place. Even when I launched this back in 2002, there were something like 4 different sites that had random exams. You could take random exams till you're blue in the face, memorize all the answers, and go pass the exam, get a license, and then you'd have absolutely no idea what you were doing. You know nothing about ham radio. You have no idea where to start. So retention was very, very low. I feel really good when I know that people have learned something. People who might otherwise not have learned something have learned something useful. And I've sort of designed my website to be around the concept of stealth teaching. Basically, people might come on here thinking all I want to do is pass the exam, but I try to make sure that they wind up learning something even if they didn't want to. It's the education part that really matters to me. So it kind of depends on what they do with that license. I mean, when you meet somebody, we were out doing a desert trail run, and running is one of my loves. And out in Phoenix, you can go participate in races that are out on dirt trails. And we don't ever win these things. As a matter of fact, Christine and I usually wind up coming in last. So we were at the turnaround point. They had a food station, and we saw some ham radio operators there who were providing, support like hams do for races. So we stopped and chatted with them for a while. We're in no rush. We wanted to make sure we were going to get solid last place. Turns out these girls had there's two ladies. They had both used HamTestOnline to get their technician licenses. And when they found out who we were, they all were gushing and excited, and they had to have pictures. And next thing you know, we had our pictures up on Facebook. And those are the kinds of encounters that really make me feel warm and fuzzy, because I really have contact with a person who's doing something useful, and they're using ham radio, and they're enjoying it. And they wouldn't have been doing that. I don't want to say they wouldn't have been doing it without me. They might have, but I know I made it easier, and I know that they learned a lot that way.
I was waiting for Tom to chime in. I figure he had a question or something. But let me ask you this, and Tom, if you're there, you may want to chime in on this too. How important is it right now, do you think, for us as amateurs to make sure that we replenish the hobby? And what I mean by that is that we help recruit new hams. That's question one. And question two is this, and that is, considering how, I guess I want to say, how socially challenged all of us hams are, how do we go about doing that? It used to be that the Elmers, the older folks, they just had their way of doing it. They were friendly. They had the grandfather image in the basement with the radio kind of thing going on, and they would take young people in under their wings and stuff like that. Well, today, the climate's changed, so there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that would love to Elmer someone, but either they have a fear of it, or they think that it's too complicated. How am I going to teach someone that sort of thing? So I guess my question is this: how important is it for us to Elmer hams, and what have you seen in the way of folks using, say, HamTestOnline to help Elmer new hams into the hobby?
I know exactly where you're going with this, Ted, and that's really the important topic of the day. It is scary. I mentioned before that my average student is over 50. It's mostly people who were interested earlier in ham radio when they were, either a teenager or a young adult, and they either didn't get into it or had to drop out of it. And now they're approaching retirement. They have an opportunity to get back into it. What I'm seeing in those terms suggests that in a few decades, ham radio is gone. There will be no more ham radio, because the people who are getting into it now are mostly older, and you're not getting the youth in the way I was dragged into it when I was in junior high. Somebody introduced me. Somebody took the time. They went out of their way to introduce me to ham radio. They taught a novice course. I studied Morse code using their tapes. They taught us a little bit about, what we needed to know to pass the novice exam, which was a real easy introductory exam. And I got my novice license that way when I was in junior high. And there's not enough of that stuff going on right now for a variety of reasons. How important is it to Elmer? I would say it is important to Elmer, but not in the sense of helping people pass the exam, because there's a better method. The best study method is HamTestOnline. So we're bending over backwards to help people, and I'm going to use the phrase that Holly came up with. That's Ted's wife, Holly. We were out to dinner with Ted and Holly and the whole family, a great group of people, 2-3 years ago, and we were talking about this very question: how do we get more people into ham radio? And Holly came up with the phrase "ham it forward." It's, I guess, sort of a little bit of a takeoff on the idea of pay it forward. If somebody does you a favor, instead of paying them back, you pay it forward. Now, there's no way that I can pay back the people who helped me get my novice license when I was in junior high, because I'm sure they've been dead for decades. And even if they were alive, I know they wouldn't really want me to pay them back. What they want me to do is to ham it forward to the next group of people. So in the spirit of Ham It Forward, we created a program called Ham It Forward, where if you purchase technician courses in quantities of 5 or more, perhaps to use with a class or a youth group or scout group or whatever group of people you have, we give them at 40% off. It's $15 a seat, $15 per student to take the technician exam. Obviously, since we're providing support and servers and webs, the website and all of that, we're not making any money on the Ham It Forward. Although it is always, everything we do is to some extent self-serving. We do expect that some of the people who get interested in ham radio will go on and buy our general and exam and our extra courses at full price. So we do hope to make money and stay in business. But we have a mechanism where a club that wants to put on a class can use our courses in conjunction perhaps with an instructor-led course or perhaps in replacement of an instructor-led course. But you still need Elmers to get them into ham radio. I mean, all my course does is prepare you to pass the exams. But anybody who's got a ham license probably remembers the fact that 90% of what you need to know to be a ham is not on that license exam. That license exam is covering things like Ohm's law and, if you get up into the extra, all kinds of ridiculous things like converting from polar coordinates to Cartesian coordinates, and that has nothing to do with being a ham. You need the Elmers to help you figure out what kind of radio to buy and how to program it and how to use it, and if you're going to get on HF, what HF radio to get and feed line and putting an antenna up in the trees or what you're going to do. You're going to need an Elmer for that kind of stuff. So Elmering is important. It's important for the people out there to ham it forward, but we'd like to sort of partner with all the clubs and all the individuals out there who are Elmering by making it easy for the students to pass the exam so that the Elmers can focus on what's really important. I think instructors should spend a lot more time inspiring people with stories about real-life emergency communications, places where ham radio saved lives, or fun things they've done, de-expeditions. How fun is field day? I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of ham radio, just getting out there and seeing how many people you can talk to on field day.
John, you mentioned help people with the radio, what kind of radio. I find it sad. In the past month, I've seen several occasions where new hams have come on and says, I got my license now. What kind of radio do I get?
Right.
They really haven't even thought through really what they want to do, with ham radio. And you mentioned that most of the new people are older people now. And I've noticed a lot of the older people, particularly, they're not on Facebook. They don't like Facebook and new technology. They can barely work a telephone. I mean, I'm getting where I can work my phone a little bit now, But, back when I got my license, man, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers. So ham radio was it, man, back then, But I think they really need to get with an Elmer to help them, guide them, on like you say, the course doesn't teach you, how to put an antenna up in the air, physically. I mean, how do you fasten that to your house or to a pole or, what are you going to do? So they really need to get some help, I think, in the area of Elmering.
Yeah, I was thinking that on the Elmering process, so John was talking about, after you got your ticket. Well, that's an important time, but I think I see an Elmer as someone who is there in the beginning and says, listen, you need to go this way to get your license. You need to get your subscription to HamTestOnline. And while you're going through that course on HamTestOnline, I'll be there. If you run across something that stumps you, give me a call. I'll be happy to help you through it. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer. But that really takes call it Elmer, takes him off the hook of the teaching process and keeps him in the Elmering position. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does. I'll be there to help them, and the course will be there to help. And the course pretty much stands on its own. Most people don't need a lot of help. But it's absolutely nice to have an Elmer there. I mean, ham radio is a social hobby, and we should not forget that. And it's important that we make social contacts with people who are trying to come in, so that once they pass the exam, they'll have a connection and they'll stay involved. Now, as for the question of what radio to get, I'm going to tell everyone who's listening now, you do not want to stop at the technician license. You do not want to stop. 90% of people do not want to stop with just being able to talk locally around the town, maybe doing local emergency communications or public support or Skywarn or whatever like that. The fun part of ham radio, the stuff that drew most hams in, is getting on HF and overcoming the challenges of talking all around the world by bouncing signals off the ionosphere. And you can't really do very much of that at all with a technician license. People need to get a general class license, and I recommend to everyone out there who's considering getting a ham radio license that they start their ham radio career at least at a general class and possibly even an extra class license. My goal is to get you off of the computer and on the air, and that means get that license, do it fast, treat it like a Band-Aid, do this study, which is a little bit drudgery and has a lot of stuff that you probably aren't going to really need to know about, especially if you get into extra. There's 80% of what's on the extra exam, 80% of extra is never ever used. That's fine. It's a hurdle you have to go through. Let's get you that license and get you on the air, but let's at least get you that general class license. Do them both in the same session. Don't underestimate your capabilities. Let's get you there, but then get involved. Get involved with local hams. If you've got a good local club with some friendly people in it, join the club. If you find the people in that local club aren't that friendly, and there are some clubs out there that are more friendly than others, if you haven't found the right club, see if there's another one. Maybe a group you'll mesh with a little bit better. But make that personal contact. Get involved. Get involved in field day. It's a fun thing. It's the wrong time to be pushing field day because we just had it, but get involved in public service events, Skywarn, Aries, Races. There's so much to do out there. It's a social hobby. Get socially active.
And I guess if you run into a group or a club that says or acts as if they don't want you there, go find another one, because there's I was talking to a fellow from Great Britain yesterday or the day before on one of the QSO shows, and he says their local group, which is called Races, no, it's not called Races, it's called something else, but it's similar to Races. And he said that he and his wife wanted to join, but the guy that was running that operation said, no, we don't really want you as a member. I thought that is really cold, but I thought, you know what? You just go somewhere else, where you go somewhere else where people are friendly and warm, and they're there. They're out there. You just have to locate them.
Start your own club.
Well, that's an option. I think most areas have. I'm in the Phoenix area, so maybe I'm a little bit blessed in a sense. There's people out there, the closest club's 100 miles away. We talk to people in Montana and Wyoming about some of the trouble they have finding test sessions. It's somewhat bizarre, but in the Phoenix area, there's so many clubs. We have club meetings that we could go to, something like at least once a week from 5 or 6 different groups, and we're just so busy we hardly have time ever to get involved in them. But they're all more or less friendly, but some of them are really super friendly. I think the challenge is out to. I'm going to put a challenge. How would I do this? I'm going to put a challenge out to all the clubs. This is what I'm doing. I'm giving you the exam preparation materials for essentially half price. The book, if you bought a book, would cost you $30. If you buy my course, it costs you $15 a student. It's a ridiculously low price. So I've bent over backwards to help you ham it forward. But I can't do it alone. I need you, the ham instructors, the club members, the club presidents, to get involved with Elmering, finding students, setting up classes, and you can focus your classes on the things that the students enjoy hearing, the stories about what you can do with ham radio and how much fun it is, and real life de-expeditions with photos and all of that stuff about how hard it is to work a pileup and real life hands-on demos. You do that part to ham it forward. I'll make the exam preparation cheap and easy.
Well, I think that's a great offer you're making, John. And, as one person here mentioned on the chat room, KD58T, he's saying that we ought to really emphasize we need more volunteer examiners, because I didn't think about the example that you talked about earlier. You prepare for an extra test, you go in, and you got to have 3 extra class to give the test. And if you only have 2, you don't even get to take the test. So, things have changed a whole lot over the years since I've been in ham radio. You had to go to the FCC in the early days, and then there was a period where an individual ham could give a test, I think, for a technician license or novice license. Maybe I'm not sure. That's been so long ago. And then the volunteer examiners came up, and I saw one here a minute ago where someone said he's been a volunteer examiner, I think 20 years. Wow. I mean, time flies. I didn't realize it's been that long, but you, I, and of course Ted, we've all been hams a long time. I've been a ham for 51 years, and hey, we didn't even have radios back then. We used signal glasses and smoke, didn't we, Ted?
Yep, that's right. A lot of string and paper cups.
That's right.
The other thing too. Let me just ask this question: what about an individual? Let's say somebody's not a member of a club, and they're just a private individual. Not that just a private individual is any less important. And they say, you know what? There's a young guy down the street here, and I would really like to see him, or a young gal down the street, like to see them get their ham ticket. Okay. Now, I realize they're not eligible for a group discount, but the price is so low to start with, it's insane to not do something. What is the going price on the technician membership? I've been doing commercials for this thing on QSO, and I think I throw a figure out of somewhere around $20, $25. What is it? What's it cost? If I wanted to Elmer somebody right now and get them into the hobby, what's it going to cost me to get them a membership to HamTestOnline for the technician test?
You can ham it forward to someone for $24.95. That's the cost of the technician course. If you're not able to do a quantity discount by purchasing 5 or more, just sign them up. Have them create an account on the website, and then you go in and pay for it, or you can create an account for them, pay for it, and then give them the login information, and then they can go on and log in and do it themselves.
The only reason I was asking that is because there's a lot of I think there's a lot of individuals that are not necessarily tied to a club. A club is a different situation where they have lots of members and the good possibility of getting a good number of people in to take a class. And I can't think of any better way than to have a group of students come together and study their HamTestOnline together as a group, and then hear the instructor share stories, and then the instructor is there also to answer questions. Should they see something they think is confusing, they've got a live person there that can help them through it, and probably that live person's available by telephone, for them during the week. But I'm thinking in terms of individuals, like tomorrow, if I wanted to Elmer someone. So $24.95, and I don't know. To me, that just seems awful reasonable to be able to put a systematic program in the hands of a young person to get their ham ticket.
Well, the most popular book out there costs $29.95 plus tax and shipping, and depending on which state you're in, you may or may not have to pay tax. And the shipping on it, last I checked, was $11. So by the time you're done, you're over $40. Even if you don't pay tax in your state, you're over $40 to get the book delivered to you. So $24.95. It's a pretty good price when you consider not only does it have all the study materials you need, but it also has the intelligent repetition question drill built right into it. It has practice exams built in that are integrated in with the study drill. It has the money back guarantee, which no bookseller is doing right now. It has reminder emails. If you haven't logged in 7 days, it'll come back and send you an email saying, hey, come back and study. We miss you. I mean, it's got so many things that a book doesn't have, and it's so much less costly than the book. And if you look out on eham.net in the product reviews, Ted, eham.net does reviews on pretty much anything related to ham radio. If you look at all the different study methods out there, the various books, the various websites and classes, HamTestOnline has more 5-star reviews than all other study methods combined.
So let me,
I was just going to,
Ted, let me ask you a question, Ted. I know at the beginning of the show you indicated that you had some important business, radio station business around 9 o'clock. You got a few more minutes, or are you?
Sure, we got a few more minutes because I wanted to ask John a question, because we've been talking the HamTestOnline thing, and we're talking about ham it forward and encouraging people to ham it forward, to get somebody else into the hobby. You've got to know someone that you can get into the hobby. And I'm with John. I think that if we don't make a valiant effort at doing this, I think if we wait and we trust all of the powers that be to be able to promote this hobby, I think that the outcome is not going to be what we expect. I think we have to take it in our own hands, and we have to move forward ourselves, one by one. If every amateur only Elmered one more person into the hobby, but every ham Elmered one more person into the hobby, the results would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. But I want to jump the gun, if you don't mind. I want to jump the gun a little bit and ask John just briefly to tell us the story how you got into the hobby to start with.
There was some guy, I don't remember his name. I was just in junior high. Actually, what happened was my best friend came and says, "Hey, I'm going to go take a course to get a ham radio license. Would you like to join me?" And I said, "What's ham radio?" And he explained it, and I said, "Sure, I guess. Why not?" So I went and took the course. Somebody put on a novice class, and then they had tapes for learning Morse code, and they taught us some theory, and they administered the exams. Next thing you know, I had a license. And then my dad, wonderful man, I lost him, oh my goodness, it's 15 years ago now. 18 years ago, I lost my dad, but he took the time to help me build a Hot Water 101 and to put an antenna up in the attic. And I worked all up and down North and South America, and, that just started the ball rolling. I believe the gentleman was associated with the Raleigh Amateur Radio Society, because I was living in Raleigh, and the RARS group, let me give a shout out to the RARS group. I know they were a great group when I was involved with them like 40 years ago. It was probably someone from that group that got me involved. So I'm glad I've had an opportunity to ham it forward to, tens of thousands of people of this website, and to a bunch of individuals as well, my brother-in-law, my son, and, I'm always constantly getting more and more people involved in ham radio, but it's just because I get talking about my favorite topic, which is my website, and you can't shut me up, as you guys probably have noticed, huh?
Well, the other thing I want to know is, what do you do now? Apart from HamTestOnline, let's put that under the table for a minute, and let's talk about John Cunningham, and what do you do in amateur radio today that really flips your switches? What really makes the hobby special for you right now?
I don't get to do as much of it as I would like. I enjoy Field Day. We just did Field Day. I had a blast there. Christina's really got involved with ham radio, I think, when we went on our honeymoon in 2013. We went to Maui for 5 weeks on a honeymoon, and we visited Field Day out there, and she got to do a little bit of, I don't know if she did any operating, but she got to do a lot of logging, and that really excited her. She had a blast with that, so we never missed Field Day after that. And, we met friends that we're still in contact with. The other thing we've done is some soda. We have a Elecraft KX3 and a buddy pole, and we go up on top of various summits in the Phoenix area, and we operate from there. The last one we did was Goat Hill. Obviously, it's too hot this time of year to do it, but hopefully we'll be able to do several more activations in the winter. We enjoy that. We've been very active in some of the nets. We both were members of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Posse Communications Posse, and very involved with that group and their activities. So basically providing backup emergency communications for the sheriff's office. We want to get more involved with a group out here that does a lot of public service events. Pretty much any weekend during the cool season, they'll have one or two public service events going on. We've just been so busy with the website and supporting the website and enhancing the website, and we've got some interesting plans in the works. I'll give you that little teaser. We're working on some really exciting stuff, but I'm not at liberty to go any further into it. An entrepreneur is someone who will work 60 hours a week for himself in order to avoid working 40 hours a week for someone else, and that pretty much describes my life. We only work on days that end in Y. Typically, we'll work anywhere from 6 to 12 hours a day, depending on what's going on. The first thing we do when getting up in the morning is check emails. I get up this morning. I got up at 4:15, checked emails. There was nothing urgent, so I was out on the road doing my 9-kilometer run by 5 a.m. to beat the heat. The last thing we do at night before going to bed is to check to see if there's any urgent emails that can't wait the night. Anything that interferes with a study, we try to answer it right away. And that's true on Christmas and Easter and every other day you can imagine. So that's my life. I don't get as much ham radio time as I would like, and too much of it's on 2 meters or 440, and not nearly enough of it is on 20 meters and 15 meters.
Well, if you would buy a military backpack and strap it on there when you do that 9K run, look how many hours a day you could operate HF. There's some of those military things with those antennas, that are like 20 feet tall. Just don't run under a power line, right?
Yeah. I tend to focus on my running when I'm running. Or actually this morning I was focusing on design of some software enhancements we're working on. I can spend my run was I think about an hour and 10 minutes this morning, and basically I designed a subroutine while I was doing my run. I lie awake in the middle of the night when I'm supposed to be sleeping, and I'm trying to solve problems for how to make some feature a little bit more friendly on the website, or how to explain something a little bit better. We live this website, both of us.
Well, I just want to say I think that one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on here is because I know Tom and I both have this thing about wanting to promote the hobby, and not just to young people, because there's people, like you say, the average student getting their tickets on HamTestOnline is 50 years of age. So, we want to promote it to everyone, and we want to just get the word out. I, once again, do not believe that the powers that be are focused on that. I guess I want to say single-mindedly. We really do, I think, need to focus on that, because I think that's the only thing that ensures the hobby's going to be here, another 25, 30 years. Beyond that, who would know? But it also is the only way that we know that our kids and grandkids will have this hobby around to participate in. Or they can look back and say, well, Grandpa was in this, and boy, we're three generations of ham radio operators. And there isn't any other hobby. There's nothing out there that I know of. I've never seen stamp collecting change the life of a young person. Now, maybe I just haven't met that young person yet. I haven't seen any other hobby compete with what this thing can do technically and intellectually and socially. Because here you are on an HF band, and you're talking to people all over the world. You're getting exposed to their culture, their life, their family. All these things come as a package as far as ham radio is concerned. And I don't know of any other hobby that does that. So to me, it just seems like it's very, very much a worthwhile thing to make sure and ensure that this hobby is going to be around. And the only way we can do that, if you'll, see now we got to have a cat on the air here. Well, you're not on, but yeah, Tom can switch to John here real quick.
Oh, yeah, let me see.
And, this cat.
Yeah, who is that? Who is that?
Right. Introduce everybody to our assistant programmer, Paisley.
Oh, okay, cool.
He helps out a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, Ted.
With the mouse.
Yeah. Ted, ham radio is, I don't even know how old it is. It's over 100 years old. It works just as good today as it did back then. In fact, I think it works better than it did back then. Can you imagine trying to work a natural disaster, like a flood or a tornado using spark gap and those kind of things? So it has improved. I think it's going to be around a long time. We just got to keep people interested in it because, like you said, if the people don't become interested, it will die off, and it does serve a purpose. Technology has changed thousands of times. Ham radio really hadn't changed that much, although there have been great improvements in ham radio. But a lot of people maybe don't realize how important it is in times when it's needed here.
Well, it's people communicating with people, and it's just like if a hurricane comes or a tornado comes, okay, the people in the community are not out looking for stamp collectors, okay? They're
true.
Looking for communications and service, someone who can help them.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think it's just, to me right now, I think the thing to do, keep in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind, and that is, let's participate in this program called Ham It Forward, and let's get somebody else into the hobby. Let's get another person into the hobby, even if it's just one. If you're a club, that's great, because there's a lot of folks that say, our club would like to teach a class, but we don't really have anybody qualified. This is your solution to your problem. But anyhow, with that's my final thought. I need to hush up here and let you and John carry on.
Okay, and I agree. We need to ham it forward, and we'll try to keep that theme going on our show this year. And as necessary, we will let people know about this program and how to get in touch with you. And that's what it's all about, bringing ham radio to the people out there, and that's what we want to do. John, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Let me throw in one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a huge amount of information out on the website. The website's HamTestOnline.com. At the bottom of every page, there's a bunch of links. One of the links is Ham It Forward, where we talk about the program, how you can go about getting your $15 subscriptions in quantity. And there's another link that talks about the free extra course for active volunteers. There's links that talk about, the structure of our courses, what is ham radio, which exam should I take, study tips. And it doesn't matter which method you study with. Even if you're going to study with some other method, you might find these study tips useful, although obviously we recommend you use the best method. There's a frequently asked questions. There's talk about why practice exams are not the best way to study. There's a link that talks about how much math you're going to run into in the exams. We have made this easy. I know that people are afraid for a variety of reasons. They're afraid because they're scared of Morse code. Well, guess what? There's no more Morse code testing. They're afraid because they're really lousy at math. Well, guess what? You don't have to learn any math at all. Christina never learned a single formula. She didn't memorize a single answer to a single math question. When she got to the math questions on the exam, she just made random guesses. She got her extra class license without learning any math. And you can do it too. Anyone who's out there, there is the barriers for getting into ham radio are very, very low now. When I got into ham radio, it took hundreds of hours to get up to extra class because you had to learn Morse code at 20 words a minute, and they didn't have these great study methods. It is dramatically easier now. Christina got her extra after 62 hours of study on the computer. She didn't use any help from me. She didn't have any classes. She didn't have any books. It was all online. 62 hours. She went into an exam session. Bing, bam, boom. Passed all three in one sitting. That's how easy it's become. And we hear from people every day who are doing that. So go to the website. Look at how easy it is. And if there's anyone out there listening who's thinking about getting a ham radio license, just understand it is now simple and easy and cheap.
Well, I think the people in the chat room have been reinforcing that what you just said. Everyone in there, I've seen multiple people talking about, how they use this program to get their license. So it's really been tested, and it looks like it works well. Hey, again, thank you very much for coming on here with us tonight. We'll have you back on the show again, maybe down the road a little ways, and we'll talk about it again. Stick around. You don't have to run off. We've got a couple other things we're going to talk about, and you can even chime in on them if you want to. And if Ted's here, he can too. I know Ted has got some broadcast work he's doing almost simultaneous here.
Well, we've got the Art Bell show on WTWW now, and we have kind of a little pre-Art Bell show that goes on the shortwave here coming up shortly. So I have to leave.
Well, that's going to be an interesting show. Art Bell pulls millions of listeners in, and we didn't even mention, we jumped right into the show tonight, but all our ham radio people on the webcast here. This program is simulcast on WTWW, a 100,000 watt transmitter in Lebanon, Tennessee, on 5085 kilohertz. And hey, I want to thank David back here, KG4WXW. Look, he raised his hand right there, and he's back there. He's the one that makes all the Ted just sits in front of the microphone. David's the brains back there to make everything work. And thank you, David, for that. And Ted, hey, thank you for being with us, man. We appreciate it, too.
All right. Well, thank you for having us on. And, John, once again, thank you for joining us tonight. Folks may have thought that we just maybe talked too much about passing the test and study aids and study materials. But let me just say this. That's the gateway. That's how you get people into the hobby. And it's interesting. I remember about 2-3 years ago, I bought some study books for a young fella, and he turned around and come back and he says, "I've lost my books. I've just lost them. I don't know what happened to them." So I bought him another set of books. He lost those too, and it wasn't deliberate, because then he turned around and bought the books himself. But then, he struggled. I mean, he really struggled. And I know some other folks that's gone down that road where they struggle quite a little bit. And I just hate to see that. I like to see people get the test, and be all excited and saying, "Hey, I got my ticket." And then they move on. They get the general and move on to the extra and all that. And that's what it's all about. But I want to say 73 to everyone. And John, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll see you next week.
It was a pleasure talking to both of you.
Yeah. Hey, and Ted, let's see, Rich, W9TIT, says that WTWW is 5 by 9 up in Wisconsin. So your antenna's doing good. Not to mention the 100,000 watts that's going out over it.
I got to tell you a funny story, though.
All right, go ahead.
I got this call. It's Matt, and he's out at the transmitter, and he says, "Can you play Surfing Bird?" Now, how many people are familiar with Surfing Bird? The bird is a word, and Papa Mau Mau, and the guy does this break in the middle, and he does this thing, and he comes back up going, bah, 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 bah. Well, what Matt wanted to do was he wanted to put the what they call the power saver on these Continental 418s have this thing called power saver. You turn it on and it'll drop the power in between syllables and things, supposedly to reduce electric costs. But I think that was just a marketing thing that Continental was doing, because I can't see that.
That may wear your current meters out.
Well, I don't think I'll do that, but it certainly makes them move around a lot. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to videotape that part of Surfing Bird where that guy's going, where he's going, bah, 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 watching the current meter bounce up and down. Well, I'll tell you, if you've never seen a current meter bounce from, say, 6 to 10 amps, when you're running 15,000 plate volts, well, if you haven't seen one of those things do that, it's a sight to see. You either think it's really cool, or some people just want to run out of the building, So anyways, but that's my funny story with the Surfing Bird on high power shortwave transmitter.
Well, that's a cool story, Ted. Thanks, Ted. Thanks back here, David. Thanks again. There you go. We're going to have to get David a segment on the show. Ted, let's think about what we can have him do next week. He doesn't have anything to do right now, see?
He's got a guitar. He can sing, you know.
We could do that. Thank you. Hey, I got a couple announcements I'm going to go ahead and make here. And hey, I got an email from WB1HBB, and he's asking a question here about possibly getting somebody on here, and maybe some people in the chat room might can help us. I think this might take a lawyer or someone that might know his business, but Warren is asking about a very important issue he'd like to hear more about, and that's volunteers' liability. And, you know, he's talking about all the public service events, emergency deployments, things like March of Dimes, marathons, and so forth. And, you know, I guess they're starting to become issues with liability there, and they're starting to make a lot of people sign waivers and stuff when they do that. And a lot of some hams now are starting to be sued. So the Good Samaritan laws have too many loopholes in it. So if there's anybody that you guys know about in the chat room that's a lawyer or practices in this area, we'd love to talk about this sometime. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Next week we've got Riley Hollingsworth is going to be with us. Riley Hollingsworth retired from the FCC. Riley, K4ZDH. Riley was the head of the Amateur Radio Enforcement Department in the FCC. So that's going to be a good show. Hopefully we'll have phone lines that we can actually take some calls into Riley. Of course, we'll have the chat room here where we can ask Riley questions. But I know there are a lot of questions out there like, you know, what's going on 20 meters on 14.313? If you listen to that, that's a mess. So, you know, maybe we need to hear what kind of a challenge that is to run those guys down and throw them in jail. So Riley Hollingsworth will be with us next week. The Huntsville Hamfest is coming up August 15th and 16th. That's 4 weeks away, down in Huntsville, Alabama, at the Von Braun Civic Center. That is a beautiful place to be. It's got more space than you could ever fill up. Air conditioned, you know, no rain, climate controlled. They claim to be the friendliest Hamfest anywhere, and I tell you, those guys really are. It's really a nice Hamfest. So if you guys have never been to Huntsville, try to make it if you can. If you can't make it, tune in on w5kub.com, and we'll try to give you that ham radio Hamfest experience. We've got a lot of prizes lined up. Again, as most of our viewers know, we give out thousands of dollars worth of prizes to our viewers. All you have to be is just logged into our chat room. Things such as antenna analyzers, watt meters, radios. Yaesu's given us 2 HTs to give away. Cantronics. We've got thousands of QSL packages of QSL cards. Hey, reels of LMR 400 cable. I mean, there's a lot of neat ham radio prizes that will be given out to our users there. So that's going to be August 15th and 16th. We will actually go live on the road on Friday the 14th. We'll be webcasting the drive down as we drive the 3 or 4 hours. I know I mentioned in the chat room, and Jill, KD8QGA, Jill says she's going to be there. Jill, come by and say hello to us. And hey guys, join our Facebook webcast group. If you're not a member of our Facebook webcast group, it's just w5kub.com. You can do a search in Facebook for w5kub.com. Join us. A lot of neat things going on there. It's just a ham radio site. You can post pictures, whatever you want to, and we keep you posted on live events that are coming up and so forth. We'll have a live copy, or we'll have a recorded copy of this webcast, hopefully up by tomorrow. for those that tuned in late and couldn't see the whole thing. So normally at the end of the show, we do what we call the really informal part. It's called we call it the real amateur radio roundtable, and it's using Google Hangout. And let me send a link. I'm gonna send a link to you guys, and with this link, if you click on that link right there, you should be able to join the show. And we'll actually, if you got a camera and a microphone, we'll actually be able to put you on the show. People out there will see you. We can have up to 10 people at one time on the show. Sometimes we don't get anyone. So you guys go ahead and start getting on there, and we will try to join you there in just a second. And again, we really thank everybody for being with us tonight, and just help us spread the word about the webcast, and help us to present forth our theme here of bringing ham radio to you. We'd like to get it to a lot more people out there. So I'll say 73 to everybody right now, but the webcast is going to stay on, and we're going to go over to Hangout. And I don't know if John, I don't know if you got Hangout or if you wanted to join us, but it's there.
All right.
And that way, if anybody wants to still ask questions, they can. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get off of Skype with you, John, and we're going to see if we can log in to Hangout. So 73, John, thank you.